medevac drop very shortly here. And even using this siege tank to siege up and just defend this wall off while this drop happens. We'll see if... looks like he might be able to scout it. If that's the case, Jicabou could have a really big heads up and get those stalkers in position way ahead of time. Sees the Viking, sees medevacs. He cannot see what's in them. But if he stays nearby and sees them fly up north, you can expect something's coming. So he's going to hold tight there for just a second. And yes, he does see those medevacs going north. I don't know if he caught it on his mini-map, though. It's going to be very close to see here. I like Canadian using this Viking just to scout and make sure there's nothing here. Plenty of time for Jicabou to react. Unfortunately, I don't think he saw it. So this drop is going to happen right in the mineral line. Jicabou's going to have to react to that extremely quickly. This does a lot of damage. Just looking at these Marines, one kill. Tank is already up to 3 kills. And going to be able to, looks like, hold off all those Zealots being warped in and maybe even kill this Immortal off. Wow, just barely being able to snipe that Immortal off with that siege tank. That was nearly out of range. And now this huge force by Jicabou. Canadian really needs to lift these Marines off and get out of there as quickly as he can. These Zealots are going to clear out this really fast. That tank needs to get out of there. The tank does not make it. Is he going to get this medevac down all the way down to 30 health? But Canadian somehow manages to slip away with 2 medevacs and a Viking. So still a fair amount of damage done there. He did kill a significant number of probes in that attack and held off plenty of little warp-in units. Meanwhile, while all that was happening, Canadian did get this command center into place, already warping it into an orbital command. Although Jicabou does spot this, I wonder how he's going to react. A very, very large, formidable force here from the Canadian. And it looks like Canadian has not seen these rocks being destroyed. Meanwhile, Jicabou is right outside there. I don't think he's going to have the reaction time he needs. If he thinks these rocks are still up, and look at that, just Protoss units flooding in from these destructible rocks like they're not even there, because they're not. And now Jicabou hitting this orbital command extremely hard, but only 1 stalker in a couple sentries. I think Canadian's going to have no problem getting this orbital command out of there before any more damage is done, and even pulling back almost all the SCVs. So not too much damage there, just pushing back that expansion for the time being. And I like using this observer just outside the base so you can see any kind of potential push. And this is a seriously large amount of medevacs, 6 medevacs. We will probably see another drop very shortly, and I'm not sure if Jicabou can see this with his observer. He's just playing around near the south of the base, but he cannot see this main force, and it is getting all loaded up into the medevacs. Very, very nice little micro there, making sure that this very weak medevac does not take units. He's actually going to drop those off and load them into something else. And we also have missile turrets going around out all over the perimeter of the base. Do we have any tech yet? No infantry upgrades for Canadian yet, and also no forge for Jicabou. I think if Jicabou wants to stay in this, he really needs to go back to his main base and not hang out down here, and probably reinforce his units as well as expand as quickly as he can, because this is an extremely large amount of medevacs. 7 medevacs now. Looks like 1's going to stay behind. Looks like he just kind of barely missed him there. So we do have an entirety of 5 medevacs, and he does have stalkers here, but those are just barely going to be able to micro out of place. Meanwhile, Jicabou is trying to scout for expansions, and Canadian's going to have no problem dropping a lot of siege tanks off. 4 siege tanks, all of them sieging up right now, and a huge ball of Marines to deal with anything else. They are basically the meat shield for these charged Zealots that Jicabou has. And he's actually not pushing out to his base. Jicabou's going to go ahead and try the good old-fashioned base swap. But Canadian does have this very strong wall off. It's going to be hard to break in there. Even if he does get in, these 2 siege tanks doing a very large amount of damage to these Zealots, whittling down that force very well. Looks like over here we have Canadian continuing to push on this base of Jicabou's. Still no stim pack from Canadian. That would have helped destroy this base tremendously faster, but he does not have that. And unfortunately, the Plight versus all Terran players, they can lift off their base and just fly it away to an island or an expansion or wherever they want, and there's really not much you can do with a small force like this. So Canadian flying up to this island here, gonna land these orbital commands, shouldn't be too bad for him. He does have almost full energy on both of these commands. He can saturate this entire base with mules, and he should be able to recover quite nicely, whereas Jicabou only has one Nexus left at the moment, even pulling these probes down to try and save them for whatever he can. And yeah, Canadian just moving around trying to scout out where that base is. Still, it might seem like Canadian has the advantage, but it is a very close match. A fairly large army here. If Jicabou moves in with these probes, with this army, uses sentries, force fields correctly, micros these zealots, charges his own units to get that speed bonus, it is still very possible to take out this force. The real catch here is getting those tanks killed and then dealing with the marine cleanup, because they do not have any upgrades, they do not have stim pack, they do not have health upgrades. So if Jicabou can deal with this army, he might be alright. He might still be in the game, but it looks like we're going to have this final confrontation here. It doesn't look like he's going to pull these probes down, so it's just going to be a all-in versus all-in, it looks like. But these siege tanks are sieged up, 4 of them, just waiting to hit this army. It looks like this zealot's going to do a tiny bit of scouting here. He does not want to run in there. Looks like Jicabou is getting a Nexus on one part of the map. And he does get hit by that siege. Very, very powerful, potent stuff. These zealots getting taken out very quickly. And, oh, those force fields are just a tiny bit too late. That entire army goes out. And Jicabou does call GG. First game goes to Canadian. And we have another game after this. Again, it is the best of 3, so stick around and check out the next matchup. It is once again the Canadian versus Jicabou for the Average Joe's 1v1 finals.